If I can be frank, it was a classroom full of people that looked nothing like me. In age, ethnicity, it was totally different. It was predominantly Caucasian. They're about maybe 65. They were just looking at me. And I was looking at them and I was saying, God, you played a joke on me, right? Because here I am to talk about love. They wanted me to talk about love for 2 weeks and they gave me nothing else to go on. I stand before this class and I was just like, you set me up, God.
Mid-South Viewpoint, a Christian news and information feature of Bott Radio Network 640 AM, discussing the news, views, issues, and concerns that affect our community. Join us now for today's edition of Mid-South Viewpoint.
Welcome to this edition of Mid-South Viewpoint. I'm Byron Tyler. Hey, I'm glad you could stop by. It's always a pleasure to meet with someone in our community that's involved with God projects. And when I mean God projects, things that God's up to advance His kingdom in the lives of believers and in the lives of those who are outside the faith and maybe don't have any hope and need to experience the grace and the mercy of Jesus Christ, what's available to them in Christ Jesus. This program features a lot of different topics and guests. I really like it when we can focus on things that are happening in our community that you, our listeners, can connect with. And that's what's happening right now as we introduce Issac Curry. Issac is on staff at Hope Press, pastor of singles ministry.
Yeah, absolutely.
How long have you been over at Hope?
I've been over at Hope serving in some capacity for 3 years now. After I left graduate school at Duke University, God kind of directed me back here in Memphis, Tennessee. I was kind of serving as a volunteer, actually. It's kind of a God story how I ended up at Hope because I originally come from Cumming Street, which is a Black Baptist church. I had done a singles conference with my friend E. Marcel Jones, a Naked Truth Singles Conference.
Hey, I was there.
You were there.
I was one of the moderators for one of the venues that took place.
Absolutely.
That's where I first met Stephanie Bolton.
Praise the Lord.
Who's got a voice like an angel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, because we're good friends, E. Marcel, and he had some speakers who had backed out at the last minute, and he had asked me to be a speaker for him, which I write in my book that I was kind of offended, that I wasn't the first. I was like one of the last choices. But I spoke in that conference, and one of the very first conferences he did was Dating with No Regrets, right? And I happened to teach on that subject. It wasn't a popular subject, so you had some people to show up, not a class full, but after we got to like our third class, it was a class full of people. Some of those people were members of Hope Church. Some 5 years later, I ended up getting a phone call from Eddie, and he was just like, hey, I want you to know that there's some singles at Hope Church that called my phone. It was 7 o'clock in the morning. I was caught in traffic, and he was like, they want to know if you can come over and you can maybe teach a Sunday school class. And I was like, okay. It was just out the blue. He was like, but they can't pay you. And so I was like, it's Hope Church. They don't need to pay me. That's a great experience, right? And so I didn't know what I was walking into. So I walked into this room at Hope Church, this grandiose building, this great large building. There was a classroom. I walked into a classroom, about 60 people. If I can be frank, it was a classroom full of people that looked nothing like me. In age, ethnicity, it was totally different. It was predominantly Caucasian. They're about maybe 65. They were just looking at me. And I was looking at them and I was saying, God, you played a joke on me, right? Because here I am to talk about love. They wanted me to talk about love for 2 weeks and they gave me nothing else to go on. I stand before this class and I was just like, you set me up, God. And they were just looking at me, no smiles, just looking at me. And I just went for what I felt God wanted me to do. But they were very welcoming, though. Coming from my context, people talk back with you, it's very charismatic, and this was slightly different, but God was beginning to change and expose me to something different. Having been to Princeton in New Jersey, where I did some grad school work, God exposed me to a lot of different things. It started right there. Those 2 classes I taught were for free, but it was a great experience. Went back to Cumming Street, and they called me maybe a couple of months later and was like, hey, could you teach another class? I swallowed. I was like, I remember that last experience. Sure. I came over and taught once again, and I didn't hear anything from them for a while. And then they finally called back and were like, hey, could you teach a 6-week class? Because they have a Wednesday nights over at Hope a few times a year. And I taught a class, and the rest is history. Because they were in transition. They were always in transition with their director, who was ever leading the class. And it was in a disarray. So one of the people came to me. He said, listen, we don't have any money to offer you, but we need some consistent teaching here. We really need your help. He said, I really like what you bring to the table. And he said, but we can't pay you. And at the time, I was out of a job. So it was really a faith thing. Because when I prepare to preach, that's an all-week thing. That's 20 hours or 20 minutes. I was like, but I have to make money. And I was speaking to someone else. It was in a different place because now I'm cutting grass and I'm actually allergic to grass and I'm just trying to make money the best way possible. At the same time, I had committed to teach here at Hope. And I just kept doing it. And the people started giving me money, taking up offerings because they knew that I was making a sacrifice. I didn't ask for it, didn't want it, but it was very humbling, though. Even at the time, the pastor now, Rufus, he walked up to me and said, Reverend Issac Curry. And I said to myself, how does he even know my name? Because we're like on the other side of the church and this small community. And here's a senior pastor know me by name. But it started there. And every week they would raise money just so that I can pay bills for that week. But it was a God thing because I was ready to leave Memphis. I didn't want to be here. I had went on interviews around the country and the doors kept closing. But I kept on, continued to serve at Hope. And one thing led to another where I was just volunteering. Then they created this internship spot where I wasn't making much money, but it was better than zero, And so I was getting paid a few $100s a month, still walking by faith. And then by the third year, which was this past year, God opened a door. Then they were like, we want you to be singles pastor, as well as I work closely with Pastor Rufus on special projects. But that's how it started. It was really rough, really bleak, walking kind of in the dark. And it was just a different context. And right now we really have a beautiful community because, like I said, when I walked in that first day, it was just one color, almost one age. And right now, I'm just really happy to say that it's intergenerational and it's multi-ethnic and we're just growing, not necessarily in numbers, although numbers have grown. It's just really what you want heaven to look like.
Issac, what an exciting story about the body of Christ.
Absolutely.
Being real and willing to step out of its comfort zone.
Yep.
Maybe the boundaries that's been set by tradition.
Yep.
Really saying, hey, let's see where this goes, but really taking some steps of faith. As a result, look what's happened. This relationship has been created.
The people at Hope, especially in that community, they have my back, and there's some really great people. And it amazes me. I wake up some mornings to emails and messages from random people that maybe have crept in through the back door and maybe sat down. Some even are married. They just come white, black, brown. They bless you with words, how maybe the word of God had blessed them and what's going on in their lives. And they're vulnerable with me because I'm vulnerable with them. So I often share my struggles. I share my story. And God has grown me there because I never knew what it was like to really be transparent before the people. And the more you take that risk, the more there is a great reward because people want to know that the pastor or that the preacher understands their struggles, not just single struggles, the everyday Christian struggles.
Well, the pursuit academically, you talked about Princeton, you mentioned Duke.
Absolutely.
Where were you heading? Where did you think you were heading?
Listen, I was engaged in 2011. That's when I was at North Carolina at Duke. I never saw myself as a senior pastor, although the more I say that, the more I get myself in trouble. It's like God's going to do exactly what you think you don't want to do. So let me throw that out there and knock on wood. But I always felt like I was best suited as an associate pastor to be able to help a senior pastor. Right. I didn't quite know what I wanted to do other than to teach in the academy as well as to be in an associate pastoral role in a church. So I wanted to always bridge that gap between the academy and the church.
Where did you grow up?
I was born in Anaheim, California. I was raised here in Memphis, Tennessee. I speak to many people about how that was a culture shock in and of itself. You're in California and it being a melting pot of people. And so when I was young, about 10 years old, my mother brought me, my brother, and my sister to Memphis, Tennessee. And when I walked into that classroom, that elementary classroom, and it was all African Americans, that was a shock to me. I'd never seen that before in my life. So talk about my accent. And so everybody just loved the accent at the time. I don't have it anymore, but it was just different for me. Life was different in Memphis than it was in California.
In California, were you raised in an environment that talked about Christ? Was Jesus part of your home life?
I wasn't raised in church. I wasn't raised in church. I didn't know much about church until maybe we came to Memphis. I know my grandmother was always in church. I reluctantly had to go to church as a young person every now and then with my grandmother. But it was when I was 15 without shame, my mother, recovering alcoholic. At the time she was alcoholic. And one evening when I was 15, she killed a pedestrian while drinking and driving. And I remember that my aunt came to get me late one evening, and she said, "Your mother's been in a car accident." We got in the car and we drove up Elvis Presley, and we made a right on Alsea Road. To this day, I've never been on Alsea Road. I've been there one time, and I just can't go again. But we're coming down Alsea Road, and I saw my mother's gray Cavalier, and the door was open. It was nighttime. I remember seeing a body bag on the ground. And normally, us guys, whenever you get into a great pain, many times the first person we'll call is mom. And I couldn't call mom, so I called God, someone that I did not know, but it just happened, God. And I knew my mother was dead at that time because the body bag was filled. Got out of the car, said, "God, please don't let my mother be dead." So as we walked closer to the body bag, I remember hearing her voice crying in the background, which was a sigh of relief. We went to the ambulance, and she was in the ambulance. And so it was kind of awkward because for one moment, you're relieved. Another moment, you recognize that the body bag is still filled.
Yeah.
And so, long story short, went through different trial at court. Ultimately, the Mothers Against Drug Driving, there were so many different things and people that were really trying to give her the hammer, and understandably. Her lawyer told her that he would be surprised if she gets less than 20 years. I said, "God, you can't take my mom away from me because I don't know my father. Was raised in a broken household." And so they end up giving her a little less than 2 years. But at 15, dealing with all of these emotions, she had to go to prison. And one day I was at school. They called me down from the intercom. They said, "Hey, Isaac, your mother is down here to see you." Now, I'll confess, in all my time in school, my mother never came to the school. So to know that my mother was at the school was already a red flag. Come down, she looks at me, she says, "Mom has to go away for a little while." And that was heartbreaking because I didn't know what she was talking about until after she walked away. Another thing I confess is that me, my sister, my older sister, my younger brother, we have different fathers. They had the benefit of all going with their fathers. My mother lost custody of everybody. My older sister was an adult. Went their separate ways, and I was left to fend on my own. And that's why I say there was this crisis moment of being homeless at 16 years old. Wasn't raised in church, but somehow, some way, I found myself at the back of a church, Cumming Street Missionary Baptist Church. And the story kind of, ascends and proceeds from there. But it was birthed in that crisis moment of being all alone by yourself, and then you find that God gives you everything that you need. And so my call to preach came while I was alone, without my mother, without my family, just kind of on my own, homeless.
Isaac, that's a story. Really a trophy of God's grace.
Absolutely.
And he takes the messed up stuff, doesn't he?
He does.
And makes something brand new out of it.
He does. Absolutely. Absolutely.
The work that you're doing presently at Hope Pres with singles, a lot of times singles are coming from diverse places in their life. Mm-hmm. Some of them can be quite complicated.
Complicated is an understatement. Not all singles have that same testimony or story or narrative, so to speak, but you can believe it's broken of some expectation. It's an expectation gap. Some expectations weren't met. Something happened. Someone left, or whether you left. I have been amazed at some of the stories that I've received and come across, and people share. They invest and they confide in me of where they come, whether it's abuse of any kind, deception. There's so many different things that someone next to you, you have no idea what their story is like. You have no idea what walking in their shoes was, no matter if they're smiling, no matter if they're sad, and whatever the case is, you look out there and not everybody is broken, so to speak, but everybody has these stories, and they're trying their best to cope and trying their best to trust God. And I tell people, trusting God is not easy. I know we can say it very easy when we say just trust God, when that's not easy, especially in our human flesh. And, we want to control. If things look bleak and you want to find a way out, you want to find a way for it to be better. And it's just not easy to trust in God. I tell you, when we got to that community, it was in a disarray, and I didn't know what I was doing. It really forced me to really trust God. And God said, listen, they need a biblical foundation. And I am fascinated with the Old Testament, which is something I focused on at Duke. I focused on Hebrew and African American church studies. It's something about the Old Testament, the stories that take place, the narratives that take place in the Old Testament that we often overlook because we don't see the relevance. You run into a Mephibosheth, a name that you can't pronounce, and you're just like, he's irrelevant, until you look at chapter 1 and you find out how the nurse who was holding him dropped him. And so somebody who was supposed to protect him and take care of him dropped him. As a result, what does the rest of his life look like? Because a person he trusted dropped him. So he grows up and he has this deficiency, this defect, because somebody dropped him. And so you take that story and you look over chapters later and you find out that he's located in this place where he actually got hurt. And then you say, how does that apply to us? You look at people, you don't even have to talk about their situations. You just talk about the Bible, make it practical, make it come to life, and allow God to do the rest. And you find out that in your life, in my life, there's somebody who I trusted, who let me down or who hurt me. And then you say, what did you do about that? And many times we don't know how to operate or deal with our hurt or our pain. It takes the best of us. It takes us down in similar places that it did for Mephibosheth. And so, we talk about these things. And I don't want to give too much of that because it's something I'm working on for the conference, a keynote speech. So I'm going to hold on to that information. Yeah.
And that's really why we got together today, to invite our listening singles to No Regrets, presented by the Hope Singles community.
Absolutely. This is by far, I'm putting the best of what I have in this. I'm putting my time, my energy, my prayer, what I believe God is trying to do into this conference. I'm so grateful for E. Marcel because so much was birthed from the Naked Truth Singles Conference of why we're here today. And so what happens with this conference, I wanted to be able to not just invite people to come to hear spiritual things, which is what you want people to receive, but we want to tackle it from all aspects. And so we have people like Adam Krieger, who is with Financial Peace University. He's going to come and he's going to talk about being financially secure. And so these are things many people leave a marriage. Many people have never been married before, but there's so many things about finances and stewardship that we need to be able to embrace.
Some of our singles are working 1, 2, and 3 jobs just to hold it together.
Absolutely.
And they still can't afford their insurance.
Absolutely. And that is so true. And so you have him here, and he's going to tackle the whole financial arena. Then you have Johnny Loper with J-Lo Fitness and Nutrition. He's coming, and he's going to tackle the being spiritual, single, and physically fit, because our health is everything. You have to be a good steward of your body, of your mind. And so he's going to come and he's going to talk about very instrumental and essential things to help you in your life. And so you have physical, the health, then you have the financial, and then I'm also bringing several of my buddies and friends to be able to address certain issues and certain things from a spiritual standpoint. And so look at this. Coming to this conference, you'll be able to engage 12 different individuals, not including myself.
You got Jennifer Ransom?
Jennifer Ransom, she's with Hope Church. Dr. Gino Gibson, who is here in the city. And many people know Gino Gibson, the place of the Outpouring Church. You have E. Marcel Jones. And you have several other people. Taft Quincy Heatley, he was at Princeton with me, and he's now in Atlanta. My publisher, Sean Saunders, he's also coming in from New Jersey. Danny Cosby, he's at Hope Church.
Danny's been right here. What a story from his drug addiction, imprisonment, meeting Christ. God's using him in some fabulous ways.
That's my best buddy.
He sang on this program before.
Has he?
Bring your guitar?
No, I didn't bring my guitar. Me and him will come back and we'll be sure to do just that. He teaches for me within the singles. He's also teaching a class called Pressing the Reset Button, how to start over. And I have my good friend in Houston, Texas, Reverend Gerard Cooper, who will be teaching Maybe It's Me, how to identify and avoid behaviors that sabotage your relationships. And so you also have a pastor from the church, Freddie Alba. He'll be teaching Before You Say I Do. Now, again, we have 12 different titles, 12 different speakers to choose from journaling. Molly Ruff, she's talking about how to cultivate your spiritual life through journaling. And she does a great job with it. And so I've tried to be prayerful and to ask God, hey, could we offer something totally different, and just being able to bring in different people. And all these people said, hey, I told them, I said, I don't have any budget, but could you bless me? Could you help me? And all of these people are flying and they're saying, you don't have to pay me anything. That's a God thing.
That is a God thing.
So this conference works like this. It costs $35. $35 for what we're offering at this conference is what you call a bargain.
And that's an understatement, Isaac.
Because you have an opportunity to engage 12 different speakers, but when you register, you will only be able to choose 4 of those classes. And my goal was to make it hard for you to choose. I wanted you to walk away saying, hey, I wanted to take 5 classes, but that was the goal. And so with a $35 registration, this is what you'll get. Your choice of lunch from Panera Bread, who will be there on that day. When you register, you will be able to choose what you want. You will get a No Regrets t-shirt, a tote bag, ink pen, wristband. You will also get my book, which is a new release called No Regrets, How to Foolproof Your Dating Life. You'll get that with the registration if you register now. You register now, you'll get my book free. And you'll get all these things, and you will also be able to engage these speakers with $35. Now, in any other situation, you'll be paying $60 or more. It's not about money. Yes, we're going to be in the hole, but more importantly, doing God's work, as I've told you, He's taught me that He'll take care of the rest.
You know, Isaac, I really believe that singles are hungry for an event like this.
They are, because here's the deal. I know there are singles. If you're not single, you know somebody who is single. Ask yourself, when's the last time there was some type of singles citywide thing? When we did the Naked Truth Singles Conference, the big thing about that was you have marriage seminars, marriage conferences galore. This is not some type of event to say, hey, woe is me, come to this. No, this is celebrating what God is doing in your life right now. And we have people coming from around the country to pour into your life, to sow into your life. And it's just such a great opportunity because you don't really have much of that here in the city of Memphis.
You know, you realize we haven't given the date yet and the time.
Oh, absolutely. How could I possibly forget the date and the time? So here's the deal. This conference that we've been talking about takes place on April the 11th. This is the Saturday after Resurrection Sunday. It takes place on April the 11th, 9 o'clock. Now, this is a one-day event. You want to be able to carve out time to sign up for this conference because it's going to start at 9 o'clock. We'll have great worship. Man, we have Matt Tudor and his band will be blessing us. And then also, I will give keynote. I will give my messages. I will give keynote, but you will also be able to engage all these people. We have vendors. We have many, many vendors from around the city who will be there. So they'll be there selling, giving away things. We'll have prizes to give away. This is going to be an extravagant day. So this is what you want. The date, the time. Once you register, which I'll give you the web address, when you register, you'll get all this information. And I will also send correspondence sooner when we get closer to the conferences. So this is what you want to do. HopeChurchMemphis.com/singles. So that's HopeChurchMemphis.com/singles. When you go there, you will see some information talking about this No Regrets Conference. You can click on the brochure to look at the brochure. You can get more information just to make sure you know what you're signing up for. You want to make sure you see everything going on. And then when you get ready to register, you can do this with a credit card. Everything will ask you your T-shirt size and all these things so that we can have these things prepared for you on this day.
And you've got it all scheduled out, complete with times of worship, times of prayer, times of meeting together. Nice lunch will be provided on Saturday, April the 11th from 9 a.m. until 4 p.m. at Hope Presbyterian Church. No regrets, living the life God meant for you.
Absolutely.
As a single.
Absolutely.
And you're enticing. I know other folks don't want to come too.
I've had several married people say, hey, is it possible that me and my husband can come? Because I've looked at some of these classes and they look so dynamic. I said, I'm so sorry. I have to be faithful. You know, I would love for you to come, but maybe another time. And so it's very enticing.
Well, it's really important that right away the folks go online and register and make plans to be there.
I know that for some people, they say, well, April the 11th is so far away. They were saying this in February. But here's the deal. This is the first year. We wanted to keep a reasonable number of people, but we wanted to make sure that the entire city knew about it as much as possible. But many people will wait to the last minute. We were doing late registration after the 31st to say, hey, that will be $50. We're almost at our quota. And so since we're almost at our max goal, people should not wait. Go ahead and register. I would hate for you to go to the website after we've closed it to say, well, I was waiting, I didn't get around to it. Then it's closed, because once it's closed, it's gone. And so we won't be able to do the day of, because coming the day of, walking up, the thing about that is you won't be able to get anything. that's not fair. That's not what we want. No matter how much it costs, we want you to be able to experience the totality of this conference. So what we're doing is we're encouraging you to say, hey, let me take 5 minutes of my time on my phone or on my desktop and just let me go ahead and sign in and just go ahead and choose these 4 classes, give them a little information, and voila.
You can voila right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
HopeChurchMemphis.com/singles. HopeChurchMemphis.com/singles. Issac Curry, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the No Regrets Conference coming to Hope Press on Saturday, April 11th from 9 a.m. until 4 p.m. Friends, you need to go to that website right away now, HopeChurchMemphis.com/singles. If folks wanted to call you personally, call your office, maybe an issue we've talked about, something you shared in your story, could they do that?
Absolutely. What I would encourage you to do, I would encourage for you to just send me an email. If you send me an email, then we can set up time to speak. My email address is issac@hopechurchmemphis.com. issac@hopechurchmemphis.com. If you email me, I promise to get back to you as soon as possible. Even if you have questions about the conference, which we always have, questions about the book. Again, this day is also going to be a book release and book signing. So on April the 11th, we'll have this No Regrets Singles Conference, and we're also having the book release and the book signing. So all of this in one. You want to know more about the book, you come to this conference and you'll get everything you need to know.
All right. Issac, thank you so much. Thank you for what you're doing for Christ's kingdom and challenging singles and having this No Regrets Conference.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Friends, that's all the time we have on this edition of Mid-South Viewpoint. Hey, I do appreciate you stopping by. I'm Byron Tyler. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Mid-South Viewpoint. If you'd like to join the conversation, you can email us. Our address is wcrv@botradionetwork.com. This has been Mid-South Viewpoint, another Christian news and information feature from Bott Radio Network 640 AM.